Now, let's take things a step further. As you may know, this type of travel was extremely perilous during the time periods prior to any advanced technologies, allowing for more pernicious routes to be taken. Merchants or sailors traveling across the Atlantic using sailboats had no choice but to take specific routes based on the Volta do Mar Largo, which is a Portuguese phrase meaning turn of the wide sea. This Volta do Mar Largo phrase refers to the oceanic rotation that signifies the ocean's currents, which is why we are taught that the sea is divided into 5 oceans. These 5 oceans are also called ocean gyres, in which each of these gyres represents a different ocean current rotation. Listen closely. According to the National Geographic, the North Atlantic Gyre begins with the northward flow of the Gulf Stream along the east coast of the United States. The Gulf Stream is the western boundary current of the gyre. The gyre then becomes the North Atlantic Current, which flows across the North Atlantic to Europe. Still flowing in a circular pattern, the current flows south as far as northwestern coast of Africa, where it is known as the Canary Current, the gyre's eastern boundary current. The gyre is completed as the North Atlantic Equatorial Current crosses the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean Sea. This entire circle and the water within it is the North Atlantic Gyre. End quote. As I've stated numerous times before, this means that only the winds and the currents of the ocean could determine how a boat or a ship was able to travel across the Atlantic, revealing the true reason why explorers initially sailed to South America instead of North America first. Also, the winds and the climate made trading and traveling across the ocean very time-consuming, resulting in slowly paced travels that will require several weeks and even months to reach a single destination, yet alone a round trip, all while hoping that the captain sailor has the ability to stay on course. And by the way, this also exposes that these ships were not able to literally travel straight across from one continent to another, due merely to the ocean's current, which can be compared to a game of double dutch, since inexperienced and even senior sailors had to jump in these gyres at the right times or they would lose. They were also limited to just having a compass for direction and the use of their hands to tell time, or rather how much daylight was left, by aligning their fingers with the horizon. All of this sounds difficult, doesn't it? According to the Royal Museums of Greenwich, life at sea during the age of sail was filled with hardship. Sailors had to accept cramped conditions, disease, poor food and pay, and bad weather. So, if the sailors had to endure famine for weeks and even months, no pay and no work, sicknesses and diseases, treacherous weather climates, and even cramped living conditions, then how would anyone be able to control, feed, and successfully keep alive hundreds to thousands of so-called slaves that were allegedly captured from Africa and packed like sardines below the deck of their sailboats? Many people died for attempting this voyage, making it extremely difficult to even keep the same crew for more than one seafaring trip across the Atlantic. So in hopes of immediately providing a safer passage by learning the hard way, capacity stipulations were forced on the sizes of cargo and the passengers aboard. But these treacherous conditions continued to plague the foreigners for centuries, making it unrealistic to transport millions of so-called slaves from one continent to another between the early 1600s to the late 1800s across the Atlantic. This is why you would not find any historical evidence nor colonial documentation of a transatlantic slave trade during this time period. So, what is a slave ship? And what can be logically concluded by critical thinking as to what was originally meant by the use of this term? First, the origin of the term slave ship allegedly traces back to the English noun slaver, which made a public appearance in the dictionary entitled Walker and Webster Combined in a Dictionary of the English Language, which was published in the year of 1877. However, what's important to note is that the term slaver was defined during this time period as saliva running from the mouth, and the closest word that had derogatory meaning of this kind in regards to the word slaver was the term slaverer, which was defined as an idiot during this time period, interesting enough. Second, the definition of the term slave ship was never historically documented before. In fact, the word was just recently created and made its way into school curriculums and books well over 100 years later, around the mid-1980s. Did you know? In the year 1828, the word slave was defined as one who has lost the power of resistance, or who surrenders himself to any power, whatever. A mean person, one in the lowest state of life. And the word ship derives from the Latin word scapha and the Saxon word sapien, which means to create form or build. And so, over time, the perception of this depiction of a slave ship is based on a particular portrayal in picture and representation in words, which has been clouded by the idea of conceptualism, deriving from the basis of conceptual art. According to the College of Central Florida, conceptual art is based on the notion that the essence of art is an idea or concept and may exist distant from and in the absence of an object as its representation. That is because the job of the mind is to create an object where there is none. It goes on to state that conceptualism began in the first half of the 20th century, not as an artistic movement, but as a philosophy, a questioning of what was taken for granted.